Okay, so good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, BSFT21D. Your midterm examination will commence next week, even though I'm not around in PUP by that time. But there is someone that will facilitate your midterm examination. And before we have our midterm, I just need to discuss the introduction to proximate analysis first and the moisture determination so that it will gonna be part of your midterm examination. Okay. All right. So technically, when you say proximate analysis, this is an exact determination of the major components of a food or feed specimen. So from the word itself, you are just approximating. Okay, so what will going to be the major food components that we are approximating here? We have the moisture, we have the fat content, we have the protein, we have the ash, we have the dietary fiber, and the total carbohydrates. So you'll just have an estimation of the nutritional quality of foods. And very basic as a BSFT graduate, that you should know what will gonna be the or how are we going to conduct no the um, proximate analysis in different food samples. Okay? So ano ba yung purpose nitong proximate analysis na ito? It's important for the legal and labeling requirement. Why is that? Because if you were gonna have to take a look on the nutrition facts available on the different food products, no, yung nasa likod, very important yung nandoon na mga macronutrients. You have the protein, you have the fat, okay, you have the sugar, you also have the dietary fiber as well. So it's one of the point of reference that is being used for the labeling requirements in every food samples. Okay, and of course economic implication, whereas it's important that we must have an analysis whether, for example, flour, one of the determining factor of the quality and the price of the flour would be the protein content. Now, by understanding or by doing protein determination, we'll be able to confirm whether the flour really contains higher protein percentage. Okay, and for microbial stability, we also have the quality and food processing operations, especially those ingredients that requires um, functional property of some of the ingredients. For example, you have the uh, flour again. No? In creating a bread, very critical yung moisture content ng flour and the protein content ng flour. Because the protein content of the flour dictates the water absorption capacity of the flour itself. Ibig sabihin, for example, kapag mataas yung protein content ng harina mo, we are referring to a hard wheat flour. Therefore, that flour has a higher water absorption capacity. Okay? Kasi yung protein, it has water absorption. It can hold water, right? So, if you're doing bread, the flour that you need would gonna be the bread flour, and the bread flour should be a high protein flour. Okay, so one of the determining factor natin would be the approximate analysis. So these are the factors that we check, no, or what we conducted approximate analysis. Ito yung magiging lundo ng discussion ng food analysis because you should know and understand how to at least perform these method. You have the moisture, you have the crude protein, you have the crude fat, crude fiber, and the ash, which represents the mineral. Right. The totality of these macronutrients is equivalent to 100%. Okay, so kaya sa approximation, pag tinutal natin yan, like, let's say for example, you have the moisture, pero wala kang crude protein, but you have the data for crude fat, you have the data for carbohydrates, you have the data for dietary fiber, and the ash, then you can just simply calculate the approximate protein content of that particular food sample. Okay, you can manipulate it that way. Now, ano yung disadvantage natin ng proximate analysis? It does not definitely define the individual nutrients. Again, we are just approximating. Approximation. It may not be that accurate, but you have a good representation of the macronutrient present in food sample. Okay? The procedure is time-consuming as well. Medyo conventional method pa kasi itong paghandak natin ng food analysis or proximate analysis sa bawat samples. But there are some methodology or there are some equipment that expedite that process. O yung time-consuming na yan. May mga advanced technology na tayong ginagamit. Okay? It does not tell how much indigestible material there is in a food. That's why you're just computing the total dietary fiber. But the digestibility of protein and the digestibility of the fiber is not represented by the proximate analysis. And it does not go far enough. Kasi approximation nga lang itong ginagawa natin dito. Okay? Now, advantages, most laboratories are equipped to run this type of analysis. Okay? It provides a good general evaluation of the food. Again, general evaluation, particularly on the content of the micronutrient present in the food sample. Okay? And much of the data available in food composition is reported in terms of the proximate analysis. For example, the food composition table. Yun yung naging basis nila on how they land on the figures stipulated on the food composition table. Okay. Normally, the expression used is wet and dry bases. And dito nagkakaroon ng kalituhan, ano? Kung ano ba yung pinagkaiba ng wet and dry bases. Because in the board exam class, the question is actually clear. If the question is asking about what is the moisture content wet basis of the potato at this temperature. Okay? So, meron kang formula na imamanipulate. Kasi magkaiba yung formula ng wet base and a dry base. And kadalasan, yung dalawang sagot ay present dun sa question sa board exam. So, you just really need to understand. You just really need to focus. Read carefully the question for you to know ano ba yung tinatanong. Okay? And the component of interest in relation to a specific basis, you have the wet that refers to a fresh sample as received or the edible portion. Kumbaga ito pa yung, for example, the papaya, wala siyang dehydrated. Dry sample, wait after evaporation of moisture, aka the total solid or the dry matter itself. Yun yung pinagkaiba nila. Okay? And this is going to be the general computation of general equations for the proximate analysis. For example, the percent component wet basis, if you're going to have to take a look on the denominator, if you're referring to WB or the wet basis, the denominator should be the amount or the weight of the wet sample. Or yung hindi pa siya nadadry. Okay? And if you are referring to the dry basis, you are referring to the amount of the denominator of the amount of the dried matter already. Right? So don't be confused on those formula. Again, the proximate analysis is really a basic calculation lang ito, class. Wala siyang very complicated integration, wala na kayong kailangan pang gagamitan ng algebraic expression. Very basic formula manipulation lang ito. Kaya lang, sa sobrang basic niya, kadalasan, sobrang dali, nagmamadali ngayon mag-compute yung mga bata to the point na hindi nila namalayan na, ay, wet basis pala yung tinatanong, and then yung ginamit yung formula is the dry basis. Yan, so yun yung lagi ninyong tatandaan, class. Okay? Now, that will gonna be the overview of the proximate analysis. And we will discuss the first part of the proximate analysis, which is the moisture determination. Right. The sample collection and handling for moisture determination, of course, nakapag-discuss na tayo dito. How are we going to prepare the sample? How are we going to homogenize the sample? Why is it important to reduce the sample size? And we also understand that the 3-gram sample could represent the whole lot because there is no misrepresentation provided that you prepared the sample well, provided that you homogenize the sample well. Okay, I'm not pretty sure if you are done with the laboratory for moisture analysis, but very critical would be the sample preparation. You have to minimize the exposure to the atmosphere and the excessive temperature fluctuations, and minimize sample container headspace as well. Right? Any atmospheric, any relative humidity changes or exposure of the sample may affect the reading of the moisture content. That's the reason why you are using the desiccator that contains desiccant that absorbs moisture. And it's also important that you have to constant weigh. Okay? Constant weigh is either the evaporating dish or the crucible. Kahit tuyong-tuyo yan by our perception of the hand, when you expose that to a high temperature, 100 degrees Celsius, okay, the water will evaporate. The weight of that particular thing will be reduced once the evaporation phenomenon happens. Okay? Now, there are going to be a lot of moisture content determination. You have the direct methods and the indirect methods. Now, we will be focusing on the physical methods, such as the drying methods that uses air oven, the convection or the forced draft oven that is actually available in our laboratory in sixth floor. However, we have some issues on the electricity. That is the reason why it limits your activity on the lab. Aside from that, we do also have some vacuum oven method, the microwave drying, and the infrared drying. So, sir, microwave drying, can we just use microwave oven to dry our food sample? The answer is no, because the microwave is just a preliminary step and complete drying of the sample. Kasi class, di ba, kapag microwave nyo yung isang bagay, hindi nyo ba napapansin, mas madaling nag-ooze out yung tubig after nyo siya i-microwave. It's because you excite the water content present on that particular food sample so that it will be easily released once you subject that sample to, for example, air oven method or vacuum oven method. Para siyang assistive method, additional step, to make the drying efficient, something like that. Okay? We also have the thermogravimetric analysis and the distillation. Chemical methods, ito yung mga Carl Fisher titration or the gas production methods. For the indirect naman, ito yung mga kadalasan ginagamit ninyo pag nagme-measure kayo ng, what do you call that? Degree bricks, no? The refractometry, the hydrometry, dielectric methods like conductivity or capacitance. But the very common that is feasible for you to use would be the refractometry and the hydrometry. And that measures the TSS or the total soluble solids of a specific liquid sample. Okay, and you also have methods based on the response of the water molecules. If either you have the NIR, NMR, or microwave absorption, or the sonic or ultrasonication absorption, and we'll discuss that, or you will actually report those advanced analytical method as an overview, for you to be familiarize yourselves on those particular analytical methods. Okay. So I will just pause on this part because I have to check my recording if I recorded it or not. So I'll be uploading 2 video links on our LMS.